All right, seventh graders, this is to help you get ready for a quiz that's coming up on 1- and 2-step equations. So I'd first like to talk about this problem. It says solve p plus 4 equals -8. As you see, to isolate p by itself on one side, to get p all alone, we have to get rid of this plus 4. What's the opposite of addition? The opposite of addition is subtraction. That means we'll subtract 4 from the left side of this equal sign. That'll allow those to zero out. Those constants will zero out. On the left-hand side, you'll be left with p all by itself. But if I'm going to subtract 4 from the left-hand side of an equal sign, I also have to subtract 4 from the right-hand side of an equal sign. That way, the equation will remain true. So positive 4 minus 4, those zero out. And so on this side, the only thing I'm left here on the left side of the equal sign is a p. Equals, and -8 plus -4. -8 plus -4. Signs are the same, find the sum. That means you take 8 and 4 and you add them up, and then you keep the sign. If I was here at -8, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, minusing 4 means move left 4, move left 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll end up here at -12. So that's just a quick visual of that. So p must equal -12. I could always show a check. To show my check, I do p plus 4 equals -8. You write down the original equation to show your check. You substitute in place of p, you substitute whatever we came up with for p. So in place of p, I'll put a -12. So -12, and then everything else stays the same. Plus 4 equals -8. Now you try to cover up this side. You're not doing anything with that side. You simplify this side. What's -12 plus 4? -12 plus 4, signs are different. Find the difference. So you subtract. 12 minus 4 is 8. You keep what you have more of. What do I have more of? Well, I have 12 negatives and only 4 positives. I have more negatives. So I keep what I have more of. Then I look at this side and I say, oh, yay! That does equal -8. So what that tells us is p equals -12 is the correct answer. Let's go to the next problem. Again, we're now going to solve this equation. 5s equals -18. So I look here, and the first thing I say, what's the operation between the 5 and the s? Oh, between the 5 and the s is multiplication. How do I undo multiplication? I undo multiplication with division. We use a fraction bar to show division at the 7th grade level. What would I need to divide by to get s all by itself with a coefficient of 1? Oh, 5 divided by 5 will get me a coefficient of 1. If I'm going to divide the left side of an equal sign by 5, I have to go over to the right side of the equal sign and also divide that by 5. That way it will remain equal. Whatever you do to one side of an equal sign, you must do the same operation to the other side. 5 divided by 5, a fancy form of 1. So I'm just left with s, 1s, or just s, equals -18 divided by 5. Okay, well, first of all, a negative divided by a positive will be a negative. Here's a little scrap work off to the side. How many times does 5 go into 18? 5 goes into 18 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. Subtract off, 18 minus 15 is 3, so it must be 3 3/5. So my answer would be -3 3/5. -3 3/5 is A. Again, you can always show a check to be sure you're correct. I'm going to put -18/5 in my equation, just so you know. 5s equals -18. So I'm going to put this in place of s. It'll just make it easier for me to multiply. So that means 5 times S. What was S? S was negative 18/5. We rewrote that as negative 3 3/5, but I'm going to put in the negative 18/5 in my equation. I'm hoping that will be a negative 18. Well, how do I multiply fractions? We put 5 over 1. I can multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom. Or I could simplify first. 5 goes into 5 once. 5 goes into 5 once. So a positive times a negative is a negative. 1 times negative 18 is negative 18. Oh, yay! It checks. Which means our answer of negative 3 3/5 was correct. That's the only reason we do checks, to double check that this answer is right. Let's go on to the next one. All right, so again, I love that the first set of problems here are all one step. So this is just a nice review of undoing our operations. So right here, to isolate n by itself, you say, what's the operation between the n and the 13? Oh, it's n divided by 13. How do we undo division? We undo division with multiplication. So you have to multiply this side of the equal sign by whatever n had been divided by. If I'm going to multiply the left side by negative 13 to get n by itself, I have to go to the right side of that equal sign and multiply by negative 13. Make sure you put your numbers in parentheses, or you put a dot between, because you don't want someone to think it's subtraction. Okay, let's look at this side, the left side. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. Oh, good. That's what I need. I need a positive 1n by itself on this side. 13 divided by 13, or 13 over 13, is a fancy form of 1. So on my left side, I have n equals, and keep in mind, you can write this as 1n. As soon as your coefficient of n is a 1, 1 times n is just n. And what's 2 times negative 13? 2 times negative 13 is a negative 26. If I review my multiplication and division rules for integers, you could always draw your hashtag. You always know to put positives along the diagonal, negatives everywhere else. And so it's a positive times a negative. A positive times a negative is a negative. We're looking at that first row. So negative 26 is my answer. And you'll notice for every one of these problems, I choose to show a check. So I write down my original equation. N over negative 13 equals 2. In place of n, I put whatever number I found for n. So in place of n, I write negative 26. We still have our fraction bar. We still have our negative 13. And I'm hoping that when I divide those out, I come up with a 2. What's a negative divided by a negative? A negative divided by a negative is a positive. So that's a positive. 26 divided by 13, that is 2. So 2 does equal 2. I'm like, all right, I'm doing super. I got this. The check worked out, which means n equals negative 26 is a correct answer. If your check doesn't work out, you better go back and check your work up here. Maybe you had an integer issue. I'm not sure. Maybe you forgot how to undo division with multiplication. I'm not sure. But if your check doesn't work out, you better go rework this part of the problem. Because you should always know when you hand in any equation test or assignment, you should know whether or not you have the right answers if you perform the check with fidelity. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this one for P. Negative 34 plus P equals 28. So really, they put all 4 types of one-step equations on here. How am I going to zero this out? It's negative 34 plus P, so I've got to undo this. How can I zero this out so I'm just left with P? Negative 34. Oh, if I add 34, that would zero out. So if I'm going to add 34 to the left side of the equal sign, I have to add 34 to the right side. What's negative 34 plus 34? Those zero out. What am I left with on this side? Oh, I'm just left with p, because I could write plus p, doesn't hurt. I could write plus 1p, or I could just write p equals. Now, these are both positive numbers. 8 plus 4 is 12. Down to 2, carry 1. 3, 4, 5, 6. The answer must be 62. And again, I show a check every time. So I have negative 34 plus p equals 28. In place of p, I'm putting 62. Negative 34 plus 62. I'm hoping that when I simplify this side of the equal sign, I get 28. That will tell me I got the right value for p. Negative 34 plus 62. Signs are different. I find the difference. So here's my little scrap off to the side. So I have 62 minus 34. I have to borrow. This becomes a 5. This becomes a 12. 12 minus 4 is 8. 5 minus 3 is 2. Oh, good. That does become 28. What do I have more of? Well, I have 62 positives, only 34 negatives. I got more positives. 28 does equal 28. Bam. All right. That tells us we got the correct answer up here. I think I can fit one more question on this first review. So let's go ahead and solve this equation. 1 equals 10k plus 39. This is your first two-step equation. Oh, 1 equals 10k minus 39. And we're going to solve that. To solve a two-step equation, we have to use opposite our order of operations. So we're going backwards now. We have to undo any addition or subtraction to move all constants to one side of the equal sign. So you're going to undo addition or subtraction to move all constants to one side of the equal sign. All right, so I'm going to look here. I go to the side with the k. I say, okay, I need to undo this subtraction. How do I undo subtraction? What's the opposite of subtraction? The opposite of subtraction is addition. So I'm going to add 39 to the right side of the equal sign, trying to get k by itself, which means I have to add 39 to the left side of the equal sign. Negative 39 plus 39, beautiful. Those zero out. I don't even write the zero in. I just drag down what I'm left with here, which is 10k. Equals 1 plus 39 is 40. Step 2 is to undo any multiplication or division. Undo any multiplication or division to get a coefficient on x, or your variable, to be a 1. You need the coefficient of your variable to be a 1. So you go on the side with your variable. You say, what's the operation between the 10 and the k? If no operation appears between, we assume that's multiplication. So that's 10 times k. How do we undo multiplication? We undo multiplication with division. So I'm going to divide the right-hand side by 10, which means I have to go here and divide the left-hand side by 10. 10 divided by 10 here is a fancy form of 1. That's exactly what we needed. So I have a k. What's 40 divided by 10? 40 divided by 10 is 4. So k equals 4. See if I can fit in a quick check. I don't know if I can. I run out at 15 minutes. That's the longest video I can make. So I'm going to substitute. I'm going to write my original equation back in. 10 times, in place of k, I'm going to put a 4. I'm going to simplify this side. 10 times 4 is 40. And then I get 40 minus 39 is 1. Woohoo, it checks. All right. I hope that helps. I'm going to make another video to continue.